January 17th, 1943. The morning sun barely pierces the thick mist that hangs over the frozen plains of the Eastern Front. Snow crunches under the tracks of Soviet T-34s as they crawl across uneven terrain, engines coughing in the bitter cold. Somewhere ahead, a Tiger tank rests like a shadowed sentinel, its turret swiveling slowly, scanning the horizon for movement. Inside a camouflaged foxhole, a single gunner checks his gun sights. His breath fogs in the air as he grips the cold steel barrel, fingers stiff, heartbeat hammering. Every moment stretches. He knows the Tiger's armor is nearly impervious, the stories of its lethality spreading like wildfire through his unit. Yet, he has studied its weakness, calculated angles, and memorized trajectories. A distant explosion shakes the ground, flinging snow into the air. The gunner steadies himself, eyes narrowing on the massive silhouette looming beyond the mist. Time seems to slow. One shot, one precise moment could turn the tide. He exhales slowly, the trigger a hair's breadth from action. The stage is set. The world waits for the shot that could pierce steel. The battlefield is ready for history to unfold. By early 1943, the Eastern Front had become a frozen crucible of men and machines. The Red Army, battered but unyielding, faced the formidable Wehrmacht in a struggle that stretched hundreds of miles across snowbound plains, forests, and rivers. After the crushing defeat at Stalingrad, German forces had retreated, but remained dangerous, their elite Panzer divisions still capable of devastating counterattacks. Among them, the Tiger Poigne heavy tank had earned a reputation that bordered on myth. The WWII was a machine designed to dominate. Its armor, up to 100 millimeters thick on the front, deflected most Allied and Soviet anti-tank weapons. Its 88mm KWK-36 gun could pierce nearly any opposition at long range, and its presence alone often stalled entire infantry advances. On the battlefield, Tiger tanks were not just weapons, they were psychological weapons. Soldiers spoke of them in hushed tones, aware that a single hit could destroy a T-34 in moments. The sight of one rolling across the snow could freeze men in place, even when cover seemed adequate. Yet despite its strength, the Tiger was not invincible. It was slow, heavy, and mechanically temperamental. Its weight caused it to sink into soft ground, and its wide turning radius made quick maneuvers difficult. Commanders who understood these limitations could exploit them, often through terrain, tactical positioning, or careful calculation of its armor weaknesses. On the Soviet side, anti-tank strategies had evolved rapidly. Early encounters with Tigers had been disastrous. T-34 shells often glanced harmlessly off their armor. Crews learned quickly that brute force alone would not suffice. Precision, patience, and ingenuity became the tools of survival. Soviet gunners studied German armor charts, observed Tiger movements, and experimented with new tactics. One method, developed by a handful of artillery specialists, involved targeting the Tiger's less protected rear or using high-trajectory shots to strike thinly armored sections. In the months leading up to the encounter, the gunner's unit had endured relentless conditions. Temperatures dropped to 30 degrees, and supply lines were often cut by aerial bombardment or ambushes. Men lived in frozen foxholes, chewing on hard bread, sipping lukewarm tea, and constantly listening for the mechanical growl of approaching tanks. Each day brought the looming threat of a Tiger crossing their path. Orders were strict. Never fire recklessly, conserve ammunition, and study the enemy's movements. Every successful engagement required planning and a calm mind under pressure. The terrain itself dictated tactics. Wide-open plains offered little cover. making concealment crucial. Forested areas could hide tanks, but restricted mobility, creating natural choke points. Rivers and ravines could slow or trap heavy armor. Commanders on both sides had to consider geography alongside manpower and firepower. For gunners, this meant that the angle of approach, the timing of a shot, and even the direction of the wind could determine life or death. Meanwhile, German tank crews were equally meticulous. Tiger operators were often experienced, sometimes veterans of multiple campaigns. Their training emphasized not only technical skill, but also battlefield intuition. They learned to read the subtle signs of ambush, to adjust fire while on the move, and to protect their tanks' weak points. Yet even these elite crews were vulnerable. The rear armor, engine compartments, and tracks presented opportunities if approached with caution and precision. This environment, a combination of lethal weaponry, extreme weather, and constant psychological pressure, shaped the moment that would soon unfold. A single gunner, armed with knowledge, nerves, and a calculated shot, faced a tank that many considered unstoppable. The stage was set not just for a confrontation of firepower, but for a confrontation of skill, courage, and tactical insight. As the Soviet gunner lay in his frozen trench, he was fully aware of what was at stake. Every calculation, every observation, every past encounter with the Tiger had led to this moment. One shot could decide not just the fate of his unit, but could become a lesson in tank warfare that would echo through military studies for years to come. The battlefield waited silently, the Tiger unaware that a precise calculation was about to test its feared reputation. By mid-January 1943, the Soviet push westward had slowed under the harsh winter and fierce German resistance. The front lines were fluid but lethal, a chessboard of frozen mud, shattered villages, and craters that punctuated every advance. Amid this chaos, elite tank units maneuvered with precision, their orders strict and timing critical. The Gunners Battalion was one such unit, tasked with holding a narrow corridor of open terrain that funneled German armor along predictable paths. Here, the lessons of previous encounters with the Tiger tank had become doctrine. The WWII's psychological impact was profound. Soviet commanders recalled battles where entire companies had hesitated to advance under the shadow of a single Tiger. Reports described T-34 crews freezing at the sight of the massive tank, aware that frontal attacks were often suicidal. However, intelligence gathered from captured equipment, reconnaissance, and battlefield observation revealed vulnerabilities that could be exploited. Weak points, including the sides and rear, engine grills, and vision ports, offered limited but critical opportunities. Soviet gunners trained to identify these precisely, often using triangulation and trajectory calculations to maximize the effectiveness of each shell. For the gunner in focus, months of preparation had honed his skill to a fine edge. He had studied the exact armor thickness of the Tiger's different sections, memorized the angles at which shells were likely to deflect, and calculated how snow and elevation affected ballistics. Every maneuver of the Tiger could be predicted if observed carefully. His crew had practiced high-angle shots, a technique requiring patience, steady hands, and nerves of steel, because standard direct fire would rarely succeed against the frontal armor of a Tiger. This method, later known as reverse trajectory targeting, involved shooting at a steep angle to strike weaker armor from above or behind, effectively bypassing the tank's main protective layers. Command decisions leading up to this moment were equally critical. Battalion leaders understood that exposing a Tiger on open ground could either present a rare opportunity or invite disaster. The gunner's position had been selected carefully, concealed behind a ridge with a clear line of sight to the expected path of the tiger, yet shielded from direct observation. Spotters were deployed to signal movement, and radio silence was maintained to avoid detection. The balance of risk and reward was delicate. One misstep could lead to the destruction of the gunner's unit, or alert the tiger to their location, rendering their advantage useless. On the German side, the Tiger crew had followed standard operating procedure. The tank moved slowly, scanning for threats, its tracks grinding through snow and ice. Crew communication was precise, focusing on navigation and observation, with particular attention to vulnerable areas in unfamiliar territory. Despite their experience, the Tiger's limitations remained: restricted maneuverability, slow turret rotation at long range, and a weight that made it susceptible to certain terrain hazards. These factors, unknown to many soldiers, offered the Soviets the critical edge if exploited correctly. The interaction of technology, terrain, and human skill had reached a point where even a single well-trained individual could influence the outcome of an engagement. In this frozen, desolate landscape, every decision counted. The gunner's understanding of the Tiger's armor, the snow-covered field, and the environmental conditions became as important as his mechanical skill. His unit had rehearsed the calculations and confirmed angles, knowing that a single shot could either fail spectacularly or succeed with devastating effect. As the sun crested the horizon, faint shadows revealed the Tiger's silhouette advancing steadily. The battlefield seemed to hold its breath. Every detail mattered: the gunner's positioning, the type of shell loaded, the trajectory calculations, even the subtle sway of the tank's turret as it crept over frozen earth. Months of study, countless drills, and the experience of previous encounters had all led to this moment. In these final moments before contact, the gunner's focus was absolute. The Tiger, a near-impervious fortress on tracks, moved unwittingly toward its vulnerability. The next instant, the culmination of preparation, strategy, and nerves would be tested. A single shot, executed perfectly, could defy the expectations of hundreds of soldiers on both sides. It would demonstrate not only the weakness of a fearsome weapon, but also the precision, courage, and ingenuity of those determined to overcome it. The stage was set. The Tiger moved closer, oblivious to the calculated danger it now faced. For the gunner, the engagement with the Tiger was more than a tactical maneuver. It was a test of resolve, nerves, and years of training. Every movement of his hands, every breath, was measured. The cold seeped into his bones, but he could not afford distraction. Months of previous skirmishes had sharpened his instincts. He had witnessed comrades fall to enemy fire, tanks overturned, and morale shattered. Now, facing the Tiger, he carried not only his own survival, but the hope of his unit. The psychological pressure was immense. Soldiers often speak of frozen moments, where time dilates, where each second feels like an eternity. This was such a moment. The gunner's eyes scanned the battlefield, noting the snow's reflection, the Tiger's faint exhaust trail, the sway of its turret. He relied on muscle memory and mental calculation, visualizing the exact point where his shell would meet the tank's armor. Mistakes were deadly. Success was transformative. The crew around him shared the same tension. Spotters froze in their positions, breath visible in the cold air, ready to relay movement. Each man knew their roles intimately. The bond between them, trust forged in harsh conditions, became a lifeline. Without coordination, the shot could fail. Human skill, courage, and cohesion were as critical as the gun itself. The battlefield was a calculated trap. The gunner's unit had chosen its position to maximize exposure of the Tiger's weak points while minimizing their own visibility. The ridge behind which they lay provided both concealment and elevation, allowing for high-angle targeting. Spotters tracked the Tiger's approach, marking every subtle change in trajectory, turret rotation, and movement speed. Tactically, the Tiger was formidable, yet predictable. Its heavy weight limited rapid turns. These and its engine struggled over uneven snow and ice. Soviet commanders had observed that such limitations could be exploited. Positioning the gun to target the rear or top armor meant calculating angles precisely. A miscalculation of even a few degrees could result in the shell glancing harmlessly off the surface. Patience was paramount. The unit waited for the perfect alignment, using the natural slope of the terrain to enhance the effectiveness of their high-angle shots. Ambushes against Tigers required discipline. Reckless fire was suicidal, and retreat was often impossible once engaged. Every movement had been choreographed. The gunner's aim, the spotter's signals, the timing of the shell release. The entire tactical setup reflected careful planning, environmental awareness, and an intimate understanding of the enemy's strengths and weaknesses. The Tiger. I was a marvel of engineering. Its armor, designed to withstand direct fire from contemporary anti-tank weapons, forced opposing forces to innovate. Its 88mm KWD K-36 gun could destroy most Soviet tanks before they reached effective firing range. However, every machine has limits. The rear, roof, and engine compartments offered thinner armor, vulnerable to specialized tactics. The gunner exploited these limitations using a high-trajectory approach. Known among artillery units as a reverse trajectory shot, the method required precise calculation of angle, distance, and shell type. The T-34's 76.2mm gun, often ineffective against frontal, Tiger armor, could penetrate thinner sections when fired at steep angles. Snow and elevation also played a role. Frozen ground could stabilize the gun, while the slope allowed shells to descend with greater penetration efficiency. Shell selection, trajectory calculations, and timing were as critical as skill. Soviet crews had refined firing tables through repeated observation and experimentation. In this moment, technology and human intellect intersected, creating a method to overcome one of the most feared weapons of the war. The engagement was not the decision of the gunner alone. Battalion leadership had studied the terrain, Tiger behavior, and unit capabilities before assigning positions. Commanders understood that individual skill could influence broader outcomes if deployed strategically. They trusted their crew's training while imposing strict control to prevent mistakes. Leadership also involved contingency planning. Orders specified fallback positions, observation protocols, and engagement rules. The gunner's chance at success depended on this framework. Effective leadership ensured that initiative could exist within a controlled, calculated environment. The discipline of the Soviet chain of command enabled a single soldier's precision to have maximum impact. From the Tiger crew's perspective, the battlefield appeared secure. Their reputation as nearly invincible fueled confidence, yet they remained cautious. Each step across the snow was deliberate. Each turret adjustment monitored for threats. Despite experience, the crew had blind spots. The rear, engine deck, and top armor were particularly vulnerable. Many Tiger operators underestimated the ingenuity of Soviet gunners. Standard frontal engagement often ignored the possibility of indirect high-angle fire. The crew's focus on conventional threats, infantry anti-tank weapons, mines, and frontal artillery left the EM exposed to a tactic that few had mastered. The enemy's confidence would soon collide with careful planning and precise execution. The presence of a Tiger tank on the battlefield carried a unique psychological weight. For Soviet infantry and tank crews, it was the embodiment of unstoppable force. Stories of entire companies destroyed by a single tiger circulated quickly, feeding fear and respect in equal measure. The gunner, aware of this reputation, understood that courage alone would not suffice. He relied on calculation, preparation, and resolve. Morale within his unit hinged on this engagement. A successful strike would inspire confidence and reinforce the value of discipline and training. Conversely, failure could reinforce the fear that the tiger was invincible. Soldiers in the surrounding area watched silently, tension palpable, knowing that their survival depended on both the tiger's movements and the precision of the gunner's shot. In these moments, psychological endurance was as vital as technical skill. The ability to maintain composure under extreme pressure defined the human element of warfare. The frozen plains dictated the nature of the encounter. Snow and ice shaped every decision. Tracks, troop movements, and tank positioning were all affected. The gunner's foxhole offered concealment, but demanded careful calculation of elevation and line of sight. Slight variations in snow density altered the gun's stability, and wind affected shell trajectory. Ridges, ditches, and trees were used strategically to mask positions and channel enemy movement. The Tiger, slow and heavy, was less maneuverable across frozen ground than it would have been in more open terrain. Each slope and obstacle created both risk and opportunity. Effective use of terrain allowed the gunner to overcome technological disadvantages, turning environmental factors into tactical advantages. Encounters like this were rare but instructive. They demonstrated that even the most advanced weaponry could be neutralized through ingenuity, observation, and calculated risk. Military analysts would later study such engagements to develop doctrines on tank warfare, ambush tactics, and anti-armor strategies. The success or failure of a single gunner could influence training manuals, command decisions, and battlefield psychology for years to come. This engagement illustrates a broader truth of the Eastern Front. Technology alone did not determine victory. Human skill, adaptability, and understanding of the battlefield often tipped the balance. Each side continuously learned from encounters, modifying tactics and exploiting weaknesses. In this way, the war became a dynamic contest of minds and machines. The reverse trajectory shot represents one of the more creative responses to technological superiority. Soviet crews understood that direct fire would often fail against a Tiger. They adapted, devising high-angle techniques and careful targeting of weak points. Precision became a weapon as powerful as raw firepower. This approach required mastery of multiple factors: the angle of fire, shell velocity, armor thickness, distance, and environmental conditions. Such calculations, performed under extreme pressure, highlight the intersection of science and warfare. The gunner's success depended not on brute force, but on analytical skill, observation, and mechanical understanding. In effect, innovation allowed a smaller, lighter tank to challenge one of the most feared machines of the war. From the German perspective, the Tiger appeared nearly invulnerable in conventional combat. Crews relied on training, superior armor, and firepower to dominate the battlefield. However, encounters like this exposed critical blind spots. Rear armor, engine grills, and vision slits could be exploited by skilled operators who understood trajectory and angle. The surprise element of a reverse trajectory shot challenged conventional defensive thinking. It forced the Germans to reconsider positioning, protective measures, and observation protocols. This confrontation would influence later engagement strategies, emphasizing the need for situational awareness and adaptability even in elite units. What emerges from these angles is the convergence of human courage, tactical ingenuity, and technological understanding. The gunner's success depended on synchronizing these elements: precise calculation, steady execution, and anticipation of enemy movements. Each angle reinforces the others. Psychological resilience enables focus, terrain knowledge informs trajectory, and technological mastery transforms observation into action. The battlefield, though harsh and unforgiving, was a stage for calculated skill. The Tiger, formidable yet flawed, would soon meet the consequence of meticulous preparation. Every angle considered: the human, tactical, technological, psychological, and environmental, combined to set the scene for a moment that would defy expectations. The moment of confrontation arrived with silent inevitability. January 17, 1943, 09:47 a.m. The snow-dusted ridge where the Soviet gunner lay concealed offered an unobstructed view of the Tiger tank, advancing along a shallow valley. Every creak of its suspension, every puff of exhaust, was a signal to the observant crew. Spotters had been tracking the Tiger's approach for minutes, marking its pace, noting turret adjustments, and confirming the angle of movement relative to their firing position. The gunner's hands were steady, gloved fingers brushing the cold metal of the T-34's main gun. He had loaded a high-velocity armor-piercing shell specifically selected for this engagement. The trajectory had been calculated to exploit the Tiger's thinner rear armor. The mathematics of the shot were precise. Distance, elevation, angle of descent, shell velocity, and even the snow's effect on recoil had been considered. 1 degree too high, one misjudged meter, and the shell would glance harmlessly off the massive tank. The Tiger moved slowly, its tracks leaving deep impressions in the snow, grinding with mechanical weight that betrayed its advance. Inside, the German crew remained confident, scanning the terrain for infantry and mines. Their confidence rooted in years of successful engagements. They were unaware that they were about to encounter a tactic few had anticipated. At 09:52, the Tiger adjusted its path slightly to avoid a shallow ditch. This small movement brought its rear armor into the optimal line of fire. The gunner exhaled, timing the release to the millisecond. Spotters signaled the final alignment, a quick series of hand gestures indicating perfect aim and minimal risk of obstruction. The foxhole felt simultaneous, sly, vast, and claustrophobic, the surrounding landscape fading into the singular focus of the Tiger's silhouette. The gunner's finger rested on the trigger. Every moment was tense, measured, rehearsed. A gentle press would unleash the shell, propelling it along a calculated arc designed to strike the weak point of one of the most feared tanks of the war. 09:53 a.m. The shell left the barrel. Its flight was almost imperceptible against the pale winter sky, yet within seconds, it would determine the fates of both the gunner's unit and the Tiger crew. The trajectory was a high-arching parabola, descending toward the engine deck and rear armor. This reverse trajectory shot was a culmination of months of preparation, observation, and calculation. The Tiger continued its slow advance, unaware of the danger above. A fraction of a second before impact, the tank's rear hatch shifted slightly, a routine adjustment by the German crew. The shell struck precisely where intended. Thin, unarmored steel that could not withstand the force. The explosion tore through the rear compartment, igniting fuel lines and disabling the engine. Smoke and flames erupted, obscuring the Tiger's silhouette, turning a near-impervious weapon into a motionless target. Inside the T-34, the gunner felt a mixture of adrenaline and disbelief. Training, calculation, and nerves had succeeded where brute force had often failed. Spotters confirmed the hit, signaling the immobilization of the Tiger. Soviet infantry nearby, previously frozen in anticipation, allowed themselves a brief exhale of relief. The Tiger crew scrambled to assess damage, attempting to operate the tank despite catastrophic failure. Mechanical systems were compromised, movement impossible, and visibility limited. For the first time, the tank that had dominated the battlefield now appeared vulnerable, contained within a single decisive shot. The psychological impact on both sides was immediate. German forces observing from a distance realized that even elite armor could be neutralized with ingenuity. Confidence was shaken. Tactics would need reassessment. Soviet troops, conversely, were emboldened. The success of one gunner reinforced the principles of patience, observation, and precision. It validated months of preparation and the experimental high-angle technique that had, until now, been theoretical in practical conditions. Commanders quickly adapted to the evolving battlefield conditions. Orders were relayed to exploit the momentary paralysis of the Tiger's division. Infantry and armored units adjusted positioning, using the immobilized tank as cover or as a focal point to concentrate attacks against remaining German armor. The single shot had shifted the tactical balance, demonstrating how detailed preparation could produce disproportionate outcomes in modern mechanized warfare. The battlefield itself seemed transformed. Snow, once neutral and passive, now framed the victory. Tracks leading to and from the Tiger were visible, evidence of its halted advance. Smoke curled upward, a visual confirmation of precision and calculated risk. Every observer, whether Soviet or German, would later recount this moment, emphasizing the interplay of intellect, courage, and mechanical understanding. As the Tiger lay immobilized, the gunner prepared for possible counter-attack. He knew that survival required readiness beyond the immediate success. Spotters remained alert, scanning for reinforcements or retaliatory fire. The landscape, hostile and silent moments ago, now became a stage for follow-up maneuvers. Every detail mattered. Shell trajectory, line of sight, and environmental conditions that had contributed to the initial success now dictated defensive positioning. The reverse trajectory shot became an instant case study in battlefield ingenuity. It highlighted the importance of angle, precision, and exploiting weaknesses over brute force. This single moment illustrated the broader truth of armored warfare. Even the most formidable opponent could be overcome by careful calculation, understanding of terrain, and human skill under pressure. The battlefield, scarred by preparation and frozen snow, had witnessed a turning point. One gunner's precision altered the immediate outcome, but its ripple effects extended far beyond the ridge. Commanders, soldiers, and historians would later analyze this shot as a masterclass in tactical innovation and human ingenuity against overwhelming technological odds. The Tiger lay immobilized, its dominance challenged. The stage was set for the next series of movements: follow-up attacks, German countermeasures, and Soviet exploitation of newfound opportunity. The decisive moment had occurred, but the consequences were only beginning to unfold. The immediate aftermath of the shot was chaotic yet precise. Smoke and fire billowed from the Tiger's rear, a violent contrast to the serene whiteness of the surrounding snow. The German crew inside struggled to maintain control, attempting to start the disabled engine and maneuver out of harm's way. Every movement was hindered by damage. The rear armor had been breached, the engine compartment ignited, and essential systems compromised. The massive tank, a symbol of near invincibility, was now a stationary fortress of steel and fire. Soviet forces responded swiftly. Infantry units, previously ordered to maintain cover until confirmation of success, advanced with renewed confidence. Machine guns and supporting artillery shifted focus to prevent German crews from regrouping or calling reinforcements. Tank commanders reassessed positioning, exploiting the immobilized Tiger as both a visual landmark and a tactical advantage. Every soldier understood that this single event, a precise high-angle shot, had altered the local balance of power. From the perspective of the Tiger crew, disbelief mixed with urgency. The commander barked orders, the gunner attempted to realign the turret, and loaders scrambled to secure ammunition and prevent further damage. Yet, mechanical failure prevented meaningful action. The engine was dead, the fuel ignited, and the structural integrity of the rear compromised. Attempts to reverse or reposition the tank failed, leaving the crew vulnerable to further Soviet action. Nearby German observers, including accompanying panzers and infantry, were forced to re-evaluate the engagement. Confidence in the Tiger's invulnerability was shaken. They recognized that terrain, angle, and enemy ingenuity could nullify technological superiority. Commanders relayed revised orders: cover weaker sections, reposition, and avoid open approaches. The shock of seeing a sing. Louis, Tati tuan feti tantit. Table A. Tiger reinforced the reality that even elite units could be compromised if careful calculation and preparation were employed. The gunner and his crew remained alert. Spotters scanned the horizon for counterattacks, communicating through subtle signals. The foxhole, once a place of tension and anticipation, became the center of coordinated observation. The unit prepared for possible German reinforcements while maintaining readiness to repeat the precision required to neutralize additional threats. Each movement, each calculation, was reinforced by the confidence gained from the successful shot. Technologically, the engagement highlighted the vulnerability of even advanced designs under certain conditions. The Tiger's frontal armor remained impervious to direct fire from T-34s, but its rear and engine compartments were exposed to high-angle artillery. This encounter would later inform Soviet tactics, emphasizing ambush, indirect fire, and careful study of enemy armor weaknesses. Artillery units, tank crews, and commanders would analyze the trajectory, shell choice, and environmental conditions that contributed to success, integrating these lessons into doctrine and training manuals. The psychological dimension of the moment cannot be overstated. For Soviet troops in the vicinity, morale surged. Fear of the Tiger's dominance, previously ingrained, was replaced by cautious optimism. Soldiers began to see possibilities rather than inevitabilities, understanding that skill and preparation could overcome raw power. Conversely, German forces experienced a rare confrontation with vulnerability. The Tiger, a machine synonymous with invincibility, had been neutralized by a methodical, precise engagement. Observers, both human and mechanical, recalibrated expectations about the battlefield. Commanders on both sides responded immediately. Soviet leadership issued orders to exploit the Tiger's immobilization, coordinating infantry advances and additional tank positioning. German commanders sought to recover the disabled vehicle or prevent further loss, redirecting supporting units while emphasizing defensive caution. These movements highlighted the dynamic nature of armored warfare. Every action had immediate and far-reaching consequences, and the ability to adapt was critical. The engagement also demonstrated the interplay between individual skill and collective strategy. One gunner, leveraging extensive observation and calculation, had influenced the broader tactical situation. Spotters, infantry, and commanding officers all played supporting roles, yet the decisive act rested on the precise execution of a single high-angle shot. This moment underscored the essential truth of mechanized combat. Technology, while formidable, required human understanding and ingenuity to be fully effective or to be countered successfully. As the fire consumed parts of the Tiger's rear, secondary explosions punctuated the tense silence. Fuel lines, ammunition, and compromised mechanical components amplified the impact. The snow around the tank was blackened with soot and scoured by blast pressure, a stark testament to the destructive potential of a perfectly executed shot. Soviet soldiers cautiously advanced, securing positions and maintaining observation. Every element of the battlefield, from terrain to human response to mechanical failure, was now part of a coordinated, adaptive system responding to a single act of calculated precision. The engagement continued for several minutes, each second reinforcing the significance of preparation and execution. German attempts to maneuver were thwarted. Soviet units advanced with coordinated precision, and the battlefield evolved under the influence of one shot. The Tiger, once a dominant force, had been reduced to a symbol of vulnerability, illustrating the limitations inherent even in advanced armored designs. In broader terms, the encounter exemplified the evolving nature of Eastern Front warfare. Experience, observation, and adaptation increasingly determined outcomes, challenging assumptions about the superiority of individual machines or units. Soldiers learned that technological advantage could be neutralized by careful study of weaknesses, tactical patience, and execution under pressure. This lesson would echo through both Soviet and German analyses, influencing training, strategy, and future engagements. The smoke gradually began to dissipate, revealing the immobilized Tiger in the snow. Soldiers approached cautiously, ready to secure the vehicle and prevent further threats. The battlefield had shifted decisively. What had begun as a tense standoff evolved into a study of precision, courage, and ingenuity. The gunner's reverse trajectory shot had proven that a single calculated act could redefine expectations, demonstrating that mastery of technique, observation, and environment could overcome even the most formidable opponent. As the Tiger remained immobilized, attention turned to exploiting the moment fully. Commanders coordinated follow-up actions, infantry secured positions, and supporting tanks readied themselves. The decisive shot had not ended the battle, but it had created an opportunity that reshaped the engagement, altering the course of the local confrontation and leaving a lasting mark on tactical understanding. The immediate consequences of the shot were profound. The Tiger tank, once an imposing and near-legendary presence on the Eastern Front, lay immobilized on the snow-covered plain. Its engine destroyed, rear armor breached, and fuel ignited. It no longer posed a threat to advancing Soviet forces. Infantry units cautiously moved forward, using the disabled tank as cover while advancing toward enemy positions. The battlefield, moments ago dominated by fear and anticipation, now shifted in favor of the Soviets. Reports from the scene later confirmed that the Tiger crew had survived the initial strike, but their tank was rendered permanently inoperative. German engineers assessed the damage in post-battle reports, noting that the armor had been penetrated precisely where it was most vulnerable. The incident was recorded as a rare example of a smaller, less powerful tank overcoming one of the most feared German machines through tactical ingenuity rather than brute force. The psychological impact extended beyond the immediate engagement. Soviet soldiers, previously wary of Tiger tanks, gained confidence in their ability to counter the enemy through careful planning and precise execution. Accounts from nearby units describe a palpable shift in morale. Soldiers who had frozen at the sight of German armor now advanced with measured aggression, emboldened by the success of the gunner's calculated shot. For German forces, The immobilization of the Tiger forced an immediate reassessment. Commanders issued warnings to all units, emphasizing the vulnerability of rear and top armor, especially against indirect or high-angle fire. Tactical doctrine was revised to incorporate increased vigilance when operating in open terrain where ambushes could exploit known weaknesses. The prestige of the Tiger as a symbol of invincibility was tarnished in the eyes of both soldiers and officers. The battlefield itself bore the scars of the engagement. Deep track marks led to the Tiger's final position, while soot and debris from secondary explosions marred the snow. Soviet observers documented the scene carefully, noting the location of the strike, trajectory angles, and environmental conditions that contributed to success. These observations were later incorporated into tactical reports and training manuals, ensuring that the lessons learned would extend beyond a single unit or moment. The engagement also highlighted the importance of reconnaissance and observation. The gunners' success depended not only on calculation, but on accurate intelligence about the Tiger's movements and positioning. Spotters relayed real-time data, allowing for precise alignment of the high-angle shot. This coordination demonstrated that modern mechanized warfare required a combination of human skill, tactical awareness, and environmental understanding to counter technological superiority effectively. In the aftermath, unit commanders reinforced training on exploiting enemy weaknesses. Crews were instructed on targeting vulnerable sections, adjusting firing angles, and utilizing terrain for concealment. The engagement became a case study in Soviet military schools, demonstrating the principle that ingenuity and preparation could offset disparities in firepower and armor. The broader strategic implications were subtle but significant. While a single Tiger's loss did not alter the course of the Eastern Front, it underscored the reality that no weapon, however advanced, was immune to careful study and innovative tactics. German confidence in the Tiger's dominance was challenged, influencing future deployments and operational planning. Meanwhile, Soviet forces increasingly emphasized adaptability, precision, and preparation in armored engagements, lessons that would shape subsequent battles. This engagement also reinforced the human element of warfare. The gunners' focus, patience, and calculated risk-taking demonstrated that individual skill could decisively influence outcomes. While machinery and technology defined the battlefield, human judgment remained central. Observers, both contemporary and later analysts, noted that the encounter exemplified the intersection of courage, intellect, and tactical expertise, proving that even elite enemy armor could be overcome when human ingenuity was applied under pressure. As reports filtered back to higher command, recognition was given to both the gunner and the supporting crew. Their successful coordination and precise execution became an example for other units facing heavily armored opponents. The incident highlighted the effectiveness of disciplined, well-trained crews in exploiting enemy vulnerabilities, reinforcing the principle that preparation and observation could shape the battlefield as effectively as superior firepower. The immobilization of the Tiger also influenced subsequent engagements in the sector. German units approached Soviet positions with increased caution, redirecting formations and altering patrol patterns. Soviet forces, conversely, capitalized on the temporary advantage, consolidating positions and preparing for further operations. The balance of local power had shifted, if only temporarily, demonstrating the strategic significance of precise tactical actions. The battlefield remained tense, but gradually stabilized. Snow continued to fall, blanketing the scene in a cold silence, as soldiers on both sides recalibrated their expectations. The WWII Tiger, once a symbol of invincibility, stood as a testament to the power of preparation, calculation, and human skill. The engagement would be remembered not just for its immediate effects, but for its enduring lessons in armored warfare. The longer-term consequences of the Tiger's immobilization extended beyond the immediate battlefield. Military analysts, both Soviet and German, later examined the engagement in detail, identifying it as a pivotal example of how ingenuity and precise execution could neutralize even the most formidable armored vehicles. Tactical reports highlighted the importance of high-angle shots, careful observation, and environmental awareness, lessons that would shape subsequent operations throughout the Eastern Front. For the German army, the incident prompted a re-evaluation of the Tiger's tactical employment. Commanders began emphasizing rear protection, supporting infantry screens, and avoiding predictable routes in open terrain. Armor vulnerability, previously underestimated in real combat conditions, became a point of discussion in command briefings and technical assessments. Crews were instructed to maintain constant vigilance, even in situations where the Tiger's presence had once been considered sufficient to dominate an area. Despite the tank's technological superiority, this single event revealed that assumptions of invincibility could no longer be relied upon. Soviet forces, conversely, drew strategic confidence from the success of the reverse trajectory technique. It reinforced the principle that careful planning, observation, and understanding of enemy weaknesses could offset disparities in firepower. Tank crews and artillery units incorporated these lessons into regular training exercises, refining their approach to ambushes, positioning, and high-angle firing techniques. Reports from field commanders emphasized the necessity of patience, precision, and disciplined coordination when facing heavily armored opponents. The psychological impact continued to resonate. Soviet soldiers, once intimidated by the mere sight of a Tiger, gained renewed courage and tactical optimism. They understood that skill and preparation could create opportunities previously thought impossible. Conversely, German units developed a heightened awareness of their vulnerabilities, understanding that even elite machinery could be compromised through clever tactics. This dynamic subtly altered engagements in the region, as both sides adjusted strategy and approach in response to the event. Equipment evaluation and technical analysis followed. Engineers examined the Tiger's armor layout, identifying sections most susceptible to high-angle fire and other indirect attacks. Soviet gunners experimented with new firing tables, adjusting shell selection, angle of attack, and timing to replicate and improve upon the success achieved by the gunner. This iterative approach reflected the broader trend of adaptation and learning that characterized armored warfare on the Eastern Front. Human ingenuity, combined with empirical observation, often determined the effectiveness of even the most advanced machinery. The engagement also reinforced the interplay of teamwork and individual skill. The gunner's actions, though central, depended on spotters, communication, and support from fellow crew members. Their coordinated efforts allowed precise observation, accurate calculations, and timely execution of the shot. Analysts highlighted this collaboration as an essential element of modern armored warfare, illustrating that technology alone could not guarantee success. Human factors, discipline, and coordination were equally critical. Historians later cited this encounter as a defining example of tactical innovation under pressure. The high-angle penetration method, later documented in Soviet military manuals, became a model for countering superior armor. The principles demonstrated precision targeting, careful observation, and exploitation of enemy weaknesses were studied not only in the context of tank versus tank engagements, but also in broader mechanized warfare scenarios. In personal accounts, soldiers who witnessed the immobilization of the Tiger recalled the mix of awe and disbelief. The machine, a symbol of German armored might, had been reduced to an immobile wreck through careful calculation rather than brute force. Such moments contributed to a reevaluation of battlefield assumptions, emphasizing that intellect, training, and strategic patience could yield results surpassing raw technological advantage. The local tactical shift was immediate. Soviet units advanced with increased confidence, securing ground previously dominated by the Tiger's presence. German forces adapted, moving remaining Tigers and supporting units cautiously, avoiding predictable exposure. These movements underscored a key lesson. The outcome of a single engagement could ripple across operational planning, affecting both strategy and morale. By the end of the day, the battlefield bore the dual marks of destruction and ingenuity. The Tiger, disabled yet still imposing, served as both a warning and a lesson. The gunners' precision, patience, and understanding of terrain and enemy weaknesses had not only altered the immediate tactical situation, but also influenced the way armored warfare would be approached in subsequent encounters. This moment exemplified the dynamic relationship between human skill and mechanical power. While the Tiger had been a dominant technological weapon, it was human observation, calculation, and daring that defined the outcome. The engagement underscored the enduring principle of war. Machines, no matter how advanced, are ultimately tools whose effectiveness is determined by the people who operate and counter them. The stage was set for the continuation of the battle, but the impact of this single shot would be studied, remembered, and emulated for years to come. In the snow-covered plains of the Eastern Front, a small unit had demonstrated the decisive influence of skill, preparation, and calculated courage against overwhelming odds. The immobilization of the Tiger tank on that frozen January morning was more than a tactical victory. It was a testament to the enduring power of human ingenuity against technological superiority. In a war often defined by numbers, firepower, and machinery, this single engagement demonstrated that intellect, patience, and observation could decisively influence outcomes. One gunner, supported by his crew and guided by precise calculation, altered the course of a local battlefield through courage and skill alone. In the broader context of World War II, the event highlights a critical lesson. No weapon, no matter how advanced, is invincible. The Tiger had earned its reputation as a battlefield juggernaut, but even the most formidable machines have weaknesses. The success of the reverse trajectory shot exemplified the value of understanding those vulnerabilities, adapting tactics, and applying knowledge with precision. It is a reminder that warfare is as much a contest of minds as it is of steel and firepower. The human element remains central. Soldiers who faced fearsome opponents relied on discipline, trust in their comrades, and careful preparation. The gunner's ability to maintain focus under pressure, to calculate every variable, and to execute flawlessly illustrates the psychological as well as technical demands of combat. This interplay between human skill and technology would continue to shape the evolution of armored warfare long after the Eastern Front had moved westward. Historically, this engagement influenced doctrine, training, and military thought. Tactical manuals would later reference the event, emphasizing ambush strategies, high-angle targeting, and the importance of exploiting enemy weaknesses. Yet beyond manuals and reports, it stands as a story of precision, courage, and the quiet heroism that unfolds in moments of extreme danger. In the snow-blanketed plains, where steel met strategy, the Tiger's defeat became a symbol of ingenuity triumphing over brute force. It reminds us that history is not only written by armies and machines, but also by the careful, calculated choices of individuals who dare to challenge the seemingly impossible. In that instant, one shot proved that courage combined with intellect can redefine what is possible, even against the most formidable of odds.